So 2024 has been a horrible year for games if you're an idiot with bad opinions. When I first started making this video, I seriously forgot how many bangers came out this year. In the very beginning of the year, Pow World blew up so much that the developers didn't even know what the hell to do with themselves. Also, the beautifully made Like a Dragon game that came out.
Holy shit!
And who could forget Persona 3 Reload? An incredible and definitely much needed remake for one of my favorite PS2 games. And this game definitely got snubbed, not even making the nominations for the other Game Awards. The Lamer Game Awards. The Lame Awards. Alright, sorry. We also had what felt like the first genuinely fun co-op game in forever with Helldivers 2. And just recently, Blooper's great remake of the best Silent Hill game. 3 is close though. And there's plenty of other amazing games that launched this year too, but in the interest of not making this video 10 hours long, I want to focus on the top 3 games that came out this year. And needless to say, this is just my opinion, so don't kill me please. And although I played all the critically acclaimed games this year, there's no way I could have had time to play every single game that came out. So maybe LEGO Horizons Adventures is secretly the best game released this year, but I guess we'll never know. I'm also not going to consider any DLC for this list, so no Shadow of the Erdtree. Obviously, if you have Elden Ring, it's a must-buy, but DLC in a Game of the Year conversation feels a little bit like apples and oranges. I also consider all of the games on this top 3 a must-buy. But let's finally jump into the ranking. And coming in at number 3... is everyone's favorite monkey game. This really blew up when it came out. It destroyed Steam's record for most concurrent players on a single player game with 2.4 million people. I remember being super interested when it was first announced in 2020 because it had 2 of my favorite things: monkeys and a 2-handed staff as a melee weapon. And yes, that makes Donatello the coolest Ninja Turtle by default. At first, I kind of assumed it would just be another Souls-like game, but I knew I'd get it anyways, so it didn't really make a difference. And this game really surprised the shit out of me. First with the fact that it wasn't even a Souls-like game at all, but rather a completely unique action game in its own right. You play as a monkey referred to as the Destined One, who is meant to embark on a journey to recover all of Sun Wukong's relics scattered throughout the land, all while fighting an absolute onslaught of bosses. And I'm serious, there's over 100 in this game, with almost all of them being completely unique and different from one another. This game also only has 1 difficulty, which can be a deterrent for some people, especially since some of the bosses are definitely very demanding. But the really nice thing about video games that don't have a difficulty option is that you know that you're getting the intended experience as you play. And the optional rematch that you have with Erlang at the very end of the game is honestly the most memorable boss fight I've had this entire year. The mechanics of the fight don't allow you to rush it, so it's really just an endurance battle where you need to maintain your composure the entire time. But I don't want to spoil too much, and I only bring him up because he appears in the very beginning of the game and it's just an optional fight. The last boss of this game is really memorable too, and if you know, you know. Beyond just boss fights, there's also a seemingly endless amount of skills that you can sink your levels into. And you also have the ability to freely reallocate any points. So throughout your journey, you can constantly try out other stances or abilities with no commitment. So whenever you find yourself getting bored of doing the same moves over and over again, you can just completely swap your skills out for something else. And it's things like this that keep a game feeling fresh even after your first playthrough. There's 3 different stances in this game with their own unique movesets, and a secret fort stance you can unlock after a few playthroughs. And on a personal level, cool secrets that you can work towards are one of my favorite things about video games. So definitely a big pro in my book. Not to mention that the narrative of this game is actually incredibly well done. I was initially expecting a gameplay over story type of thing, and in the beginning of the game, that's what it really seemed like it was going to be. But after you meet Best Boy Zhu Beiji, it really leans into its story. And nearly every character and boss from this game is from the Chinese novel Journey to the West. And if you want to know how good the narrative in this game is, I literally bought Journey to the West off of Amazon right after playing this game. So Black Myth Wukong is an incredible game, and I'd recommend it to anybody who enjoys action games and doesn't mind a difficult but unbelievably rewarding experience as you improve at the game. Dying 20 times from the Wandering White is just building character development, I promise. And now it's time to get into the runner-up for Game of the Year. LEGO Horizon No, I'm just kidding. If you played this game before, you knew this was going to be on the list somewhere. I beat the game and I still have no idea what the hell a ReFantazio is. But don't worry, you don't need to know what it is to appreciate this banger of a video game. This is another one that surprised the shit out of me. Atlus cooked unbelievably hard with this one, seriously. I've been a Persona fan since I was a teenager, so I've been familiar with their game format. But this game went above and beyond their usual systems, to the point that I honestly believe that they can compete with the likes of Final Fantasy in the JRPG space. And I don't say that lightly. Rather than having high school students secretly deal with problems in another dimension, they decided to just straight up tell a full-fledged fantasy story, and oh man, is it crazy. I'm not going to spoil anything because of just how crazy things get, but I'll give you a general overview of the plot. The moon is forcing the people of the world to choose the next king using absolute democracy. So whoever can garner the most support by the end of the deadline by any means necessary is declared king. So people who said politics should stay out of games are real quiet after that cool shit, I bet. A giant moon forcing democracy on a bunch of people is exactly the kind of cool shit you'd expect from a JRPG. But one of the frontrunners in this race to king is a man named Luis, who you immediately know is evil as hell. I mean, he seriously fits the fallen angel archetype to a T. But you play as the protagonist, who's actually fully voiced for the first time in an Atlus game. His current canon name is Will, but if you know Atlus, they like to change character names for some reason, so who knows what it will be like a year from now. But Will was close friends with the previous king's son, who was cursed by Luis. And your main objective is to save the prince while gathering your party of different fantasy races so he can rule in Luis's stead. So just a really great idea for a fantasy RPG. And not just any RPG, but a turn-based one. I'm an outspoken lover of turn-based games, or at least the ones that don't equate to just hitting a button to auto-attack. And I chose to play this game on hard, and let me tell you, it really will make you experiment with different strategies. This game uses a variation of the typical job system in a lot of RPGs, where you can reclass any character to things like Thief or Mage and carry those skills over to another class. And there is no shortage of classes in this game. I mean, wow. You also have the relationships with your companions, which is a traditional Atlus mechanic, where as you develop your relationships with your allies, it will unlock more classes and spaces for abilities during combat. So the free time in this game is a balancing act between deepening your relationship with your comrades and progressing the main story and doing a ton of side content. Seriously, I had about 100 hours by the time I finished playing this game for the first time. You also have a fairy companion who's a lot like Morgana, except unlike him, you don't have the urge to constantly throw Gallica out of a window. And this is another thing I don't want to spoil because of the reveal, but the fourth member of your party who starts as a thief is probably the best character in Atlus history. If you know, you know. And oh my god, with all this summarizing, I almost forgot about this banger. Oh my god, it's so good. You'll have absolutely no idea what he's saying, but I promise you, if you play this game, you're going to start singing along with that chanting at some point. When I first started the game, I loved the battle theme, but honestly, I thought I'd get sick of it. You know, everybody knows Persona music is great because it's like instrumentals and normal music, but this is like a monk chanting. But rest assured, even after beating the game and doing all the side content, I could have easily listened to it for another 100 hours. The battles in this game are so addicting. Once you really start to get the flow of it and have a bunch of moves at your disposal, you're going to want to battle all of the time. And last but not least, it has a Coliseum. Okay, now this one might not apply to everyone, but I absolutely love whenever video games have a Coliseum in them. It automatically bumps them up like 5 points in my book. I really can't recommend this game enough to anyone who enjoys RPGs in any capacity, especially any Baldur's Gate 3 fans out there who had their mind changed on turn-based combat, and they're looking for a new game to sink their teeth into. It does have a slow start like any other Atlus game, but I assure you it's only setting up this grand story that it has to tell, and you will not regret giving it a chance if you're on the fence about it. So yeah, this game is incredible and absolutely one of the best things to come out of this year in video games. But it's time to move on to the main course. What I believe to be the actual game of the year. And it was a very close contest, but I don't have any hesitation about what I believe the number one spot goes to. This game straight up had me in tears.
This shit means something to me, man.
Metaphor was so good that I actually had to go back and play this game on hard again to see if it really was as good as I remembered. And oh man, is it. I had unbelievably high expectations for this game already. Not just as a Final Fantasy VII fan, but as someone who has played all the mainline games in the franchise. Except for 11. I missed that one. And it went above and beyond all of those. I honestly don't even know where to start. Everyone already knows how well regarded Final Fantasy VII is, and seeing it have all this love poured into it is so surreal. From the music to the way that the characters interact with each other.
How could I not tag along?
How can I not tag along? Bullshit.
To the story, to the combat. It's all seriously just so good, man. Now, the Final Fantasy VII remakes are in a bit of an interesting position compared to other video games. I can't think of any other game series that had a trilogy greenlit before the first game even released. And the fact that they have 3 full-length games to tell this huge grand story is not lost on Square Enix at all. Since you spend all this time with these characters, you really begin to understand them and start to notice the subtle changes in them naturally. Nothing feels sudden or forced. And I know they have gone on record saying you do not need to play Remake in order to play Rebirth, but I am here to tell you that that is straight up crazy talk. I'm sure they just wanted to sell more copies, which is totally understandable, but you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you hop right in with this game. However, watching the cutscenes on YouTube is definitely an option if you don't mind doing that. But let's very briefly go over the story in this game. It of course takes place right after Final Fantasy VII Remake, and it's the first time that the party leaves Midgar in order to chase Sephiroth and save the planet from the meteor that he plans to summon. And immediately in the first area, it does a great job of showing you the beauty of Gaia, and it has you interact with the planet in ways that let you slowly get attached to it throughout your journey with everyone. And this is a huge improvement over the original. I love Final Fantasy VII, but honestly, I never really felt any attachment to the planet. I only cared about the characters. But this game does both. And speaking of characters, I don't think it's a stretch to say that is the single best part of this entire game. I'm sure any sane person can agree that Cloud is cool as shit. Like, just look at my man on a Segway. But there is not a single miss in Final Fantasy VII's lineup. Of course, Cloud, Barret, Tifa, and Aerith all return from Remake, but this game introduces Red, Yuffie, and Cait Sith as party members, along with teasing Cid and Vincent for the final game of the trilogy. And this group dynamic is without a doubt my favorite part of the entire game. Unlike the original, where you only ever heard reactions to the story from the 2 party members that you brought with you, this game includes everyone. Even if your immediate party is Cloud, Tifa, and Yuffie, everyone is always still with you, just in the background. So you never miss out on any cool voice lines or funny interactions because everyone is always together. And as simple as it sounds, this feels like a huge innovation in the Final Fantasy series. And all that teamwork leads right into their newest system, Folios. There's tons of different synergy abilities and stat upgrades that you can unlock for all your characters. And you do this by increasing your party level, which is a brand new mechanic in this game. You can increase this by interacting with your party members or taking on the many side quests all around the world. And it all comes together to give what I think is the best part of this game. It's an adventure between this misfit group, and you watch them get closer through all these experiences they have together. One of the most common critiques I see about this game is that nothing happens. And while that's of course hyperbole and definitely not true, I totally see what they mean. There's a lot of minor character interactions in this game, but it's these exact interactions that let you get so attached to these characters and the story and even the planet.
Some know me as the world's greatest materia hunter. Others, an unstoppable assassin. And the rest, a benevolent and beautiful ninja. But who am I truly? Who ties what rose? The one and only Yuffie!
Cool.
Hey, hold it!
Like, come on, the dynamic is so good. I'm also kind of a big sucker for the whole found family dynamic in fantasy games, and this game perfects it. And I haven't even gotten to the combat, my god. And like I said before, I love turn-based games, and the original Final Fantasy VII was turn-based. Well, ATB, but same thing. And since then, Final Fantasy keeps on experimenting with new gameplay in each of their new games. But they've strayed from these turn-based roots for a while now. However, I really think that this is the perfect system that can please both sides of the aisle. If you haven't played Remake, the combat is like a standard action game, but you can hit X at any point to go through all of your skills, magic, and items that you want to use while time slows down immensely. And you can set all of these magic and abilities with the game's core system, Materia. Essentially, you can attach a huge variety of magic and skills to any character you want, allowing you to totally customize every single party member exactly as you want them. So for example, you can use Tifa in her traditional damage monk role, or you can give her an attack to magic attack materia, which now all of a sudden she's an extremely effective mage. It's completely up to you, and you'll probably be swapping between different sets of materia pretty often. Okay, to give you an idea of how this all comes together, let's look at a fight with one of the area bosses. This guy is a Quetzalcoatl. Since I've already assessed this guy, you can look to the left to see a little blurb about his weakness. We can see that he gets pressured if we keep exploiting his elemental weakness to ice. And thankfully we got Yuffie to help us out with that. So I start off the fight by immediately switching to Yuffie, and I build up her ATB gauge so I can switch to ice attacks. And then I clone her so that damage can be doubled. And now that Yuffie's set up and working in the background, I switch to Tifa to start building up her ki so she can do more damage. And finally switch back to Cloud to be able to really lay into him. And shit like this makes the combat so much fun in this game. And if you plan on taking on the challenges that this game has to offer, you will really need to master the system, trust me. It gets rough out there. It's also filled to the brim with minigames, which is very reminiscent of the original game. But some people had an issue with the huge amount that can be found in this game. And I really could not disagree anymore, especially since almost all of them are optional. However, for my fellow completionist, you have a massive journey ahead of you. I have been slowly working towards the platinum since this game has come out, and I still have so much left to do. By the way, after I already started working on this video, Hamaguchi actually apologized for how hard this platinum trophy is. I managed to get the high scores on all of the minigames, so all that's left is the combat challenges, which get unbelievably difficult, trust me, oh my god. And I didn't even talk about Queen's Blood yet, holy shit. Final Fantasy is a big fan of having sort of like a huge minigame to be a part of some of their games. You had like Triple Triad in Final Fantasy VIII, you had Tetramaster in Final Fantasy IX, and in this game you have Queen's Blood. It's practically completely optional, so if you don't like it, you don't really have to get invested in it. But oh my god, this is one of the most fun mini-games I've ever played in a video game ever. There's a huge variety of cards that you can get in your deck and so many different ways that you can win these matches. I would seriously buy a completely separate game of Queen's Blood by itself. That's how good this is. And last but not least, there isn't one Coliseum, but many. That's the real reason it won my game of the year. But jokes aside, this game is such a special experience. And I understand that this game is the most limited one on this list, as it's only a PS5 exclusive for the time being. But Square, of course, will eventually release it on PC and Xbox, and when they do, I cannot recommend it enough if you have not played this game. If you enjoy video games, it would be criminal not to experience one of the most celebrated video games ever, getting arguably the best treatment that any fan could ever ask for. And Square Enix has gone on record saying that they are confident that the third game in this trilogy will be one of the most loved and popular games in the history of all video games once again. And after this game, I can't even imagine what the hell they have in store for the next one. But you can bet your ass I'll be there day one. So those were my top 3 picks for Game of the Year. And as I said before, this was an insanely great year for video games, and I honestly could have made a top 10 if I wanted this video to go on forever. But let me know what you think the Game of the Year is, or if I skipped over anything you think deserved more recognition, or if LEGO Horizon Adventures is really that great of a game after all. But that's all I have for you. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more video game content. Now go play Dark Souls 1.